Hey, it's Chris Thurman here. Today we're going to be talking about groove, and specifically how I recently discovered it to be one of my weaknesses. Well, let me explain. Back in high school jazz band, long time ago, I played alto saxophone. I was heavily praised for my improvisation. I would always get the solos. I did a lot of flashy things. I was pretty much fearless, to be honest. But at the end of the day, I associated my improvisational ability with a natural groove, which I do have. But through all of that praise and also continuously watching Victor Wooten's Groove Workshop, which I will also be referencing a little bit throughout this video, I got arrogant and complacent about my ability to play in time, kind of unknowingly. So all that up until now, I just had this eternal realization that I'm just not this groove machine that I've made myself out to be. I have all these timing inconsistencies and final products that are released right now.
What? Well, that's preposterous. Why would you settle for anything less than perfection?
Well, the thing is, when you're in a recording environment, there's just this point where you sort of have to let it be. Especially in genres like jazz or funk or anything that just sort of lends itself to improvisation. One of my covers, Smile Bomb, would be an example of this. Because you're just going to drive yourself nuts the more you hammer away at constant attempts. At a certain point, it just becomes disingenuous and kind of contrived, if that makes sense. Anyway, with this new discovery, obviously I have to step up my game with this aspect. So what is groove? Well, if we head over to the most reliable source, Wikipedia, we find that groove is the sense of propulsive rhythmic feel or sense of swing. Okay, it doesn't necessarily have to be swing, but basically it is the pulse of the music. Check out this clip from Victor Wooten's workshop, where his guest Anthony Wellington shows us the yardstick of time and groove.
They didn't have a good visual representation of what time was. So I wanted to come up with an exercise that would give people a visual representation of what time is, because sometimes we think time is abstract, but it's really concrete. At any particular tempo, there's a set distance between 16th notes or 8th notes or quarter notes. It's very concrete. It's not abstract at all. So I came up with this exercise I like to call the yardstick of time and groove. So as you can see up here, I have a visual representation of what one measure looks like. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a slash on any one of these 16th notes, and we're going to just play the note A, the 5th fret of the E string, wherever I put a slash, every time the measure goes around. 2, ready, play. Good. I heard it? Good. Good. Next figure. Notice how that feels. It grooves a little bit more.
So it's a visual representation of subdivisions. Each beat has marks indicating the 16th notes with the short lines, the 8th note subdivisions with the ones in the middle, and of course the downbeats. He goes on to get more complicated with this concept.
So it's still A, C, D, E, but now all the slashes aren't in the same place. And this is a little tricky. Oh, let's try it again. So that tambourine is beat 1. So we got.
Whew. So obviously this is a very good tool to develop a sense of pulse. So I've composed this little Trials of Subdivisions thing. Basically I've laid down a drum track as well as some synth hits that will go along with my bass hits. And what's going to happen is I'm just going to go and play through these hits, a lot of different syncopated rhythms and stuff. It'll start off simple and eventually get to like triplets and 16th note offbeats. It'll go through this progression pretty fast too. It's a pretty short little song. But I will have the download link for the MP3 of this to play along to, if you would like. I'll also have the sheet music on screen somewhere over here, wherever I can fit it, if you want to play along. My goal here isn't to be perfect. Well, I mean, it kind of is, but I want this to be difficult enough for me to have to struggle with. At least, even if I play it really well, I'm going to be trying very hard to just be right in the pocket. Anyway, let's do this. So you can see why that's pretty difficult. It's not too bad, you know, it's also short, but I tried to get a lot of the different parts, like for instance the end of 3 as opposed to the end of 2. I tried to get a lot of different parts of syncopations represented in this, as many as I could. I could probably make a longer one if I wanted to. But it really has my mind going. I was really focusing hard on the groove. And the thing is, when I'm really trying, it's like I have this imaginary drum fill in my head, and I can kind of feel it. It's like this little energy just goes like across my arm and just like into the note. It sounds really weird, but that's kind of what it is. It's like the drum fill happens, even if there isn't one, it just kind of locks in when I'm really focused. And when you really focus hard on the groove like that, you can physically feel when it's right. I definitely think that, as I said, was the main problem with me. I wasn't focusing. I thought I could do this effortlessly, pretty much. There's a point where you keep, just like anything, you spend time on it, keep focusing really hard on it, and eventually you just don't have to think about it as much anymore. And I thought I was already at that level. Something else I'd like to address, and I don't hear many people talk about this because it's kind of a weird, tiny thing, and I've certainly been guilty of it. Some musicians will give themselves the benefit of the doubt when playing a rhythm. What do I mean by that? So you are playing a song, a rhythm, whatever, and you just kind of whiz past it, and you're like a 16th note off, 32nd note off, whatever, and something in your brain just says, yeah, I got that. That's either because you heard the correct rhythm happen in the rest of the band or another instrument, and so your brain just kind of automatically justified it, or you just wanted yourself to be right and convinced yourself of it. It's a weird thing. And that is why it's super important to record yourself. So I recommend don't just play through Wellington's yardstick exercises or my trials of subdivisions. Record yourself doing it, because that eliminates all bias. You can convince yourself all you want you played that rhythm. You know, play it back as a listener and see if you really did, you know? You'll also know when you improve. Much easier. You could sit here and play through this stuff for hours and nothing could change because you're in the moment as a player. But with the ability to listen back, you can more easily pick out what went wrong and what went right. And to use Victor Wooten again, he always says listening is the most important part of music. I have to say I agree. And I say listen to yourself and learn. Anyway, that's all for me. Let me know what you think about this style of video. It's kind of new for me, but I hope it helped. I know it was kind of long and convoluted and I can't cover everything, but if you have any questions, I'll answer anything in the comments, and I'd love suggestions on any other topics you'd like me to cover. But until then, practice that groove, and most importantly, make music with it.